Hello lovelies, today I would like to talk to you about why tabletop RPGs actually matter, beyond just using up time and space in our lives by rolling dice and painting miniatures. I was asked this question a while ago, or this topic was proposed to me a while ago before all the computer troubles, and the question has been nagging at me a bit ever since. So why do I think that what I do for work and what we all do as a hobby is actually maybe a little bit important? I mean, sure, we all love the dice goblining and our mounds of unplayed books and unpainted miniatures, that hoarding instinct that lots of people have, but is there anything more to it? Is there anything that is actually important and helpful and impactful upon our world? You can ask that about any of the arts, I suspect, and while a lot of rather uncultured people will say no, a lot of other people will say yes. The modern art scene, for example, often the whipping boy of public critics, outside of any aesthetic considerations it might have, it is a fantastic tool for money laundering for organised crime. So, you know, it has a use, it has a purpose. The music industry cloisters away all the sex pests in a self-contained bubble. I don't think we can quite say the same about either of those things about RPGs, but this hobby has far deeper roots than you might think. So I'm going to take you on a wander through why I think, at least, that RPGs are or can be more than just games, even though I think that's already enough. Besides being escapism and something to do, rather than having a third wank, they're transformative experiences. They tap into something primal, something magical and different about the human animal, and that's the power of stories. I may even get a little bit pretentious here. After all, it hasn't done Black Lodge any harm. First off then, let's address play. As adults, we are often taught that play is something we should have left behind in childhood. It's something frivolous, somehow beneath us as adults, that we have more important things to do, like work, and more work, and overtime. Gen X and onward may have stubbornly refused, in many cases, to grow up, but it is still a very powerful and present societal pressure upon us all. But it is, nonetheless, absolute bollocks. There has to be more to life. Play, I think, is essential. Play is how we explore the world, how we process things, how we learn things, how we experiment, conceptualize, anticipate, prepare, and ruminate upon the things that are important to us and consider them. How we model out what is going to happen, or could happen, or has happened from different perspectives. Even animals, other animals than the human animal, engage in play, and even as grown members of their species, you can see them engaging in play. Even though they do pass out of their more playful younger stage, they do keep it up, even as fully grown individuals. Part of the reason, I suspect, that kids pick things up so quickly is probably because they play constantly, trying out new ideas, new concepts, new roles with their powerful and untainted imaginations. So why do we, as adults, stop doing that? Time pressure, perhaps. There are more things competing for our attention. It requires a degree of work and effort when we've spent all our work and effort? Is it stress? But then play alleviates stress, which is a good pointer to the fact that it's good for us. Do we really have nothing more to consider, to think about, to prepare for, or to learn from? In an RPG, you get to play with possibility, even impossibility, the outer bounds of potential configuration space, the coordinates of potential reality of things that might or could happen. You step into a new role, a new world, a new persona, and you interact with all of those things in ways that you may never experience in real life, or you may. You could be an heroic knight, a backstabbing space smuggler, or a robot convinced that it's actually a dragon. It's all possible in games, and that is the key, I think, to it, possibility. Imagination is like a muscle, and RPGs give it a proper workout, along with your problem solving and social skills. The more you engage your imagination and your mind, the stronger it gets. It keeps your brain sharp and flexible, and who doesn't need more of that? Especially as we get older and senescence begins to take its toll and make itself felt. Play, intellectual games, strenuous thought, powerful imagination, and problem solving. These are all things that are also considered to help stave off senility. So what better than role-playing games to exercise them all at the same time? And it's not just you, is it? You're not reading a book or watching a film passively taking in this information. Tabletop role-playing games are a team effort and social, even if you're playing online. Even if you're solo playing, you're interacting with the author. You're not telling a story by yourself, you're doing it together. There is an interplay even in solo play. Every player brings their ideas, their quirks, their personality to the table, and bring all of those things for their characters as well. So what you end up with is something greater than the sum of its parts. You end up with your own personal mythology and group history and verbal shortcuts and references. Do you remember when? It can be an intense bonding experience, and gaming friends are generally the best friends you're going to make in your life. And it's so good for building team cohesion that even commercial companies have started to take notice and to hire professional games masters to run games for their teams, alongside all their trust falls, paintball outings, and pizza parties. But it might be my bias, but I think that RPGs are probably better than any of those other things. But that's where the teamwork comes in. You can't win in an RPG by acting alone. And it's not even really about winning. It's about creating a shared experience, a story that somehow manages to take everyone by surprise with its twists and its turns and whatever happens with the dice. I've personally seen games transform the life and prospects of people with extreme social anxiety, hell, even myself, even people with ASD. The structure of the game acts like a cast or a scaffold for people with social issues. It's a safe place, much as that term has been abused, for them to come to some sort of understanding of social interactions and dynamics, with the structure of the game helping them cope with it. Same for those with problems with English, spelling, writing, mathematical learning problems. The gamification provides a motivation to overcome their limitations because they want to enjoy the game better and understand the game better, and that helps them overcome that hump, that barrier to them understanding. Problem solving, as I've alluded to before, is a huge factor here. RPGs throw obstacles at you, and you've got to figure out how to navigate them, overcome them, or bypass them. But whether it's a strategic fight against a tribe of goblins, a complex tomb puzzle, or negotiating the social intricacies of a ball being held by the king, there is no singular right answer to any of these problems. Sure, your thief might be good with a lockpick, but sometimes there's no lock, or even no door, so you have to think creatively to overcome or sidestep. Do you distract the guards? Do you cause a scene in the tavern to draw them away? Do you sneak up and kill them? Do you knock them out? Do you poison their food? What do you do? Do you take the more or less unconventional route? So it's not just about stats and dice rolls, though in some games character construction is a skill all of its own. It's also about how you approach the problem and how plausible everyone at the table thinks that your approach is, so it encourages lateral thinking. Speaking of imagination and getting pretentious for a moment or two, let's talk about Alan Moore, which may seem weird. The guy behind Watchmen and V for Vendetta. He's one of those writers who treats imagination and the written word as something sacred and magical. To him, magic and storytelling are intertwined, like a pair of horny snakes. He's not talking about magic in a sort of Harry Potter sense. He's talking about the deep symbolic power of words and stories. Magic, for Moore, is the act of shaping reality with words, symbols, and myths, or creating an hallucinatory flow state in people who are reading. You weave ideas together, and that can change, potentially, how people think, or at least introduce them to new ideas. And role-playing games are a lot like that when they're at their best. When you sit down at the table as a games master, you are essentially becoming a sort of shaman, or shaman, depending how you prefer to pronounce it, for the group. You're guiding players through strange, uncharted territories of the imagination, and you never quite know what's going to happen. It's a vision quest of sorts, without the aid of hallucinogens. Well, usually. It's storytelling as ritual with rules and a surrender to the capricious and random forces that are at play. And just like in ancient myths, the stories we tell in RPGs can be transformative. They can help you work through personal issues, confront fears, or explore sides of yourself you didn't know existed. It's not therapy, and I can't emphasize that strongly enough. But like any other form of fiction, it can move you. And that's not sinister, that's not mind control, it's not propaganda, or at least it shouldn't be. It's a positive thing that can happen when we interact with fiction. And very few forms of fiction offer the level of interactivity that role-playing games do. Computer games, despite their best efforts, certainly don't. The games don't have to do any of these more esoteric or powerful things, or they don't have to do it every time, but there can be more than simple escapism to them. Those stories, those characters, they're not just escapism, they're symbols, they're sigils, they're runes, they're powerful. When your party slays the dragon, it needn't just be a dragon, though sometimes a dragon is just a dragon. It could represent something to you, something you're wrestling with in real life. Your characters needn't just be personas, they could be metaphors or aspects, different parts of yourself, or things you keep suppressed or hidden, given a chance to play. Or they might be something that's wildly outside anything you would normally experience or think or even want. An exercise in radical empathy. Maybe your devil-may-care rogue represents the freedom you feel you lack in your day-to-day life. Maybe your stick-up-as-ass paladin is a version of a strict parental figure you have a hard time understanding. None of this needs to be the case. I will keep emphasizing this. Pure escapism is good, and games aren't therapy. Self-insertion is generally a kind of rookie setting for RPGs. But the potential is still there for them to be powerful and affecting. Now, we can't really mention Alan Moore without bringing up Grant Morrison, who perhaps is even more accessible and certainly has a more modern magical outlook on these sorts of things. Maybe it's just because I only like weirdos who write comics. I don't know, but this this pretentiousness and esoteric outlook certainly brings something to what they write. Morrison did a lot of drugs and got involved with a lot of spiritual nonsense and some interesting people, especially during the period he was creating The Invisibles, which everyone should read. He talks about this in terms of the idea of fiction suits, which I think someone else came up with, but Morrison has tapped into it. It's a term he's used to describe how we step into and inhabit fictional personas, not just when we interact with stories and maybe we read from a character's point of view or whatever, but how we do this in everyday life. Different masks for different people, different presentations to different people according to our needs, how we wish to be perceived and so on, how we act differently around our parents than our friends, than our work colleagues, and each of these is a different face. He argues that everything we do, every role we play, whether it's as a worker, a parent, or even a gamer, is like wearing a suit made of fiction. You're embodying an idea, a character. And so you can choose to embody characters that are different from yourself. Maybe you need to be more confident for a job interview. You could create or adopt a fiction suit of a character who is more cocky and self-assured and believes that he's going to get the job, and so you will come across more confident, perhaps arrogant. If you can imagine a character and play a character, why not do so in real life to your advantage, or where you need to, or to protect yourself, like an exo personality. So RPGs contain literal and explicit fiction suits. You step into these characters, these worlds, you inhabit them, and you inhabit their world for a few hours at a time. You are that hero, that scoundrel, or that genius, or at least you're looking out at the world through their eyes. Maybe after a few sessions of playing a courageous warrior, you can tap into that headspace and feel a bit more confident in your own life. Or maybe you pick up some cunning negotiation tactics from your rogue from a session that you played. These experiences, these suits, needn't just be left at the table, though I find concepts like bleed and so on veer dangerously close to the satanic panic ideas that games can turn you evil or transform you into someone else. That's all bollocks. But we can make a conscious effort to embody and become. If you want to do it, if mere escape from the grind isn't enough, you can integrate these fictional experiences into your real life, just as how dreams can affect us in our real lives. Morrison talks about how magic is the act of writing your own story, literally altering reality with your will working. A touch more esoteric and a bit more woo-woo than hurling fireballs, I'll grant you, but there is something to it, and role-playing games are the perfect metaphor for that. Every time you sit down to play, you're rewriting your own narrative, reshaping how you see yourself and the world around you. And that's why tabletop RPGs matter, I think, at least to me. They have immense value, just merely as entertainment and distraction and escape from the relentless mundanity of everyday life. And I think that's why I react so vociferously to people who want to drag all their everyday real-life baggage into RPGs. But they're not just entertainment, or at least they don't have to just be entertainment. They can be powerful tools for exploring identity, building connections, shaping the world around us, and shaping ourselves. Whether it's through teamwork, problem-solving, or tapping into these ancient mythological structures, the tabletop role-playing games keep us connected to the magic of storytelling, the bardic tradition, literal magic, literary magic, but something that is in the grasp of everyone. It is wildly democratic, this power. They're a collective hallucination of a fantastical world of gods and monsters that we enter into willingly and ritualistically. A vision quest. They remind us that we don't just have to be passive observers of life or entertainment, but we can be active participants in everything that goes on around us. We're the authors of our own stories, and we get to decide how they're told and just how heroic or otherwise we want to be. So next time you sit down at the table, appreciate the importance of it, the personal importance, but also the broader importance. You're not necessarily just playing a game. You're tapping into something ancient, a uniquely human power, the power of stories. You're tapping into millennia of storytelling, dozens or hundreds of common story tropes and Jungian archetypes, if you want. You're stepping into a fiction suit. You're reshaping reality in yourself. You're connecting with that primal magic of storytelling. And all it takes to enter this collective hallucination, this spirit world, is conversation and imagination. Maybe a few dice rolls. And that, at least to me, is why they matter. So have fun out there. Zang.
Ars Goetia presents classical demonology for OSR games. If you like your magic to have a little authenticity, if not reality, then Ars Goetia will give you all the tools necessary to bring classical ritual magicians and demonologists into your OSR games.